That lucky star I talk about is due. Honey, everything's coming up roses for me and for you.
Hello, everybody. This is Classic Cat, and welcome to the Jerry Lewis Roundtable discussion episode. I don't know, at this point, we haven't done one for a while. We have different people every time now, but we will definitely add Jeff Abraham and Alan Goldfarb back again in the future. But I wanted to do one specifically more aimed at Martin and Lewis, and what better way to talk about them than with the author of Marketing Mayhem, Rick Greene, and our new yeah, we're going to be discussing the new color edition, an upgraded edition that's now available on Amazon. And I'm really excited. I don't have it yet. I'm sorry I don't have it yet, but I will have it very soon, and we can do like
You will.
a new review just on that, because I did a whole review on the black and white version, and it was, I can't imagine it's gonna be like even more beautiful than it already was. And we have Gary Cohen, Rick's friend, longtime friend. They started off together as friends of Laurel and Hardy, and Gary has like a lot of experiences with Jerry Lewis, and also lots of memorabilia. We all have lots of memorabilia in common, and we'll definitely put show off our little pieces of collection a little bit later on. I brought in my scarf, my babushka scarf that Joe Patrici sent me last year, and I finally put it in this room. So I'll show that off a little bit later. But let's focus on Gary right now. So Gary, how did you come to be a fan of Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis?
Obviously, it was from TV, born in the middle 50s. And I just, from the beginning, I saw Jerry and Dean, and I loved their movies, their comedy. And I just wanted to see everything about them. It wasn't until I've got my very first piece of memorabilia. I still have it. It's from 1968. That started it off. That was a liner to a McDonald's tray. I went to McDonald's with friends, and that started my collection. I was eating the hamburger and fries, and I looked at this little piece of paper, and the new Jerry Lewis movie, Don't Raise the Bridge, Lower the River, was coming out, and I kept it. And it wasn't until years later, till I met Rick, that I started collecting movie posters and stills and so forth. But I've loved Jerry and Dean since I can remember. And then several years later, after that, discovering them, I got to see Jerry Lewis in person for just a few minutes. And I'll tell you about that as we go on.
And I have to say, Gary, the book came out just about 1 year ago. In another few weeks, it will be the 1 year anniversary of the black and white publication date. And I can't believe you're showing me stuff that I would have freaking loved to include in the book, but you had it all in storage. So
yeah, I for years, when I lived in San Francisco, when I seriously started collecting, I bought everything. So if I saw a magazine and there were 4 copies, I bought all 4 copies. If I saw a movie poster at a show, I bought everything that the guy had. So I had boxes and boxes that filled up my apartment and the garage. And so I didn't want to live that way. So I got a storage unit. And to this day, even though I've been selling for over 20 years now on eBay, I still have stuff that I pull out. I don't know where I got it. I just had so much accumulation. And yeah, I had, some pictures framed and on the walls, but I wasn't the type of collector that had everything in their house. I had too much. So I moved it into filing cabinets and stored it away. And to this day, I have 2 storage units with Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin stuff. Some Laurel and Hardy is left, but I decided to start selling this stuff. And I love having what I have. And as a collector in the beginning, I thought I will never get rid of this. So I'd go to a show and a dealer would sell me a picture or a poster, and I thought, how could this person sell this? You got to move on to another level of being a collector when you have so much that you can now get rid of it or sell it to someone new. And that's the joy I get as a collector. I want to continue the legacy of Martin and Lewis to the next generation and the generation after that. So people that buy my material, it's just like me from 30 or 40 years ago when I started collecting. This now belongs to somebody else to enjoy and carry on the legacy of Martin and Lewis in their careers.
Well, I guess I'm not
I've
at
been
that
even
point
buying
yet.
some of Gary's stuff.
Yeah, I'm not at that point yet where I'm
it will
selling.
take you. No, it's going to take years. Literally, it will take years until you accumulate enough where you say, you know what, I like this one that I want to keep, but this one, maybe it's the second version of a poster or a movie book that you have.
Yeah.
And you can sell that one. But it's a gradual progression of being a world-class collector. That's what I call people like Rick and myself. We are world-class collectors. And I think you and some of the contributors of Rick's book are also world-class collectors. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the book because they have so much material that they shared with Rick in the book. Stuff I never saw before. I was aware of it, but I never saw it in person. And there were things that, I looked at in the book that were magazines that I had at one time. And, I love them because they're gorgeous covers from the TV previews and movie magazines and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. So what experiences with Jerry did you have? Like in person?
Well, when I was 17 or 18, in person, that was the 17 or 18. He was in Skokie to have a meeting with the one of the sponsors of the Muscular Dystrophy Association, Brunswick Association. You probably saw them for years on the telethon giving a check. Well, he was in Skokie where I lived, and here's a picture of me filming Jerry coming out of the building. I was in the building for his talk with the people of Brunswick, and years later, I sent this to his office, and he autographed it for me. But that picture was taken probably when I was in high school. Maybe it was 1971 or 72, and I had him autograph it in 2008 because I pulled it out. And by then I had some of his autographs on movie posters because I became the photographer for the San Francisco MDA office. So that's how I got to actually meet him and work with him 2 years in a row on a weekend. But that I love this picture because there's my teenage self meeting my idol, and I was filming him with a 16 millimeter movie camera, but my friend, I gave my still camera to him, and that's why I have this image, because my friend, we were cross shooting, and that's why I'm in this photo. So I love this picture. And then it was 1978 and 1979. I was living in San Francisco when I was asked by the MDA to photograph Jerry for the weekend while he was in town for very high-level MDA meetings with corporate sponsors and MDA staff. And so when I showed up to do that, I was at the MDA office, and they said, oh, by the way, can you go to the airport and pick up Jerry's luggage? Again, super Jerry Lewis fan, I'm living the dream. I'm hired to hang out with Jerry Lewis for a weekend and take pictures of him throughout the weekend. And now I'm going to pick up his luggage. So I went to the airport, picked up his luggage with another staff person. We get to the hotel, and here's a picture in his suite of just some of his luggage. And I love those aluminum suitcases with the stickers. And here's another picture. You can actually see all the aluminum suitcases with his logo stickers on there. This is just maybe a third of his luggage. I'm not even showing the luggage that he had his clothes and things in. But if you see the phone and the little desk in the side there, that is where I picked up his handwritten memos. This is on the stationery for the St. Francis in 1978. And then here's from the following year, 1979. I love this piece. It's his card would say Jerry Lewis at the bottom, but he's talking about his props, mics, stands, tracks, batons, everything for his show. I love this piece of memorabilia because that is, yeah, that's just great. Wow. So I spent the weekend, we were doing roll-ins with co-hosts for the local telethons. We went to KTVU, where I remember when I met you, Kaylee, we had lunch together. I told you the story about going to the studio with him, and he asked the lighting crew to relight the set that they shot on every day for that co-host's afternoon movie show. And I thought, why is Jerry doing that? Well, because Jerry is the perfectionist. He saw something wrong, and he had them correct the lighting for the two-shot that he was going to be sitting there with the co-host. We also did a press club, or Jerry did a press club about the very, very important discovery for myasthenia gravis. It's called, they exchanged the plasma in the blood for the patients. And here he is talking to the press about that. Wow. And that's in the corner here is Pat Weaver looking up at Jerry. And Pat Weaver was the president of the MDAA at the same time. He is also a huge TV top of the line person back in the 50s and 60s. So he's from early TV. And I didn't know that at the time, the history of how important Pat Weaver was. I just knew him as the president of the MDAA. Also that week, this is one of my favorite photographs. Jerry had done the Mike Douglas show 2 weeks prior, and he had a cast on his wrist. And so here he is in San Francisco, and I took this picture when he was having the cast removed at Children's Hospital. Wow. We went to Children's Hospital actually to meet Dr. Dow, who I don't have his picture here, but he was the one that made that discovery of plasmapheresis. Very important, bring people really back from the edge of death to, I met them at the press club. So Dr. Dow's in another one of my pictures. And then here's outside of the hospital. I like this picture because it's Jerry looking at pictures that he took that he had picked up at some, camera store, that we all do, right? In those days, we just picked up the pictures, and that's the limousine we were in the background. Jerry's looking at pictures that he took. And, these are just great moments in my life because, again, I'm only in my mid-20s. I'm with my all-time idol, Jerry Lewis, and I'm documenting the weekend of my time with him, because of the MDA high-level meetings, and just watching him, as a person interacting with people, fans from all over the world. Everyone knew who he was. He's the most recognizable person in the world. And, professionals, at Children's Hospital, the doctors, everybody in awe of this man. And I just saw that continuously. As a photographer, I'm observing things around me, not just the picture I'm about to take, but the surroundings of the people that are noticing Jerry Lewis and then running or coming up to him and just thanking him for things that, humor and entertainment that he brought into their lives. Like the three of us, he did that through the movies and through the TV shows, telethon. So this was a great experience for me to 2 years in a row, I spent a weekend with him.
I wonder,
Gary,
like,
if you will hold up. Oh, I'm sorry,
oh,
Kaylee. I want to give the
yeah,
fans a little tip here.
okay.
Gary, if you will hold that first photo where he signed it, where you were the young photographer in the background. One thing that I learned early on, you'll see how under his signature he puts 08. For decades, Jerry had a personal assistant, a secretary, who masterfully copied his ability, the signature style. And most of the fan photos that went out were not signed by Jerry Lewis. The way to know Jerry really signed an autograph, he always put the year underneath his signature.
Yes.
So that's really signed by Jerry. And here's one that I've got where he wrote the entire year, 1980, really signed by Jerry. If there's, and that's from about the mid 70s on. If it doesn't have the year, it probably wasn't signed by Jerry Lewis.
Yeah, I noticed that. And these, his memo cards and the I have several of these from the hotel. He always puts the date. He was just fastidious in detail on everything. If I look at his books, his scripts, there's so many notes that he wrote down. He was just a perfectionist. Well, we've always heard he was a perfectionist, but this is like, this proves it.
Since we're showing autographs, this one is actually on Gary Lewis's record, and you got Jerry's signature there. For some reason, Jerry's on here, and then Gary's, and then you got a few of the other band member. Just one other band member up there. But yeah, so you got. I don't know if you can. It's showing reverse, but yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, I guess Jerry is on the back of this one, so maybe that's why he signed it on there. But yeah,
I remember buying that album when it came out.
yeah. So that was interesting. I saw this one on eBay, and I was like, "Well, just got all of their signatures, so that's awesome."
Yeah.
Like 3 in 1. So that's one of the ones I have, and then I have one that's on one of the promotional materials for Dean and Jerry, and it has both of their signatures, although I suspect only one of them actually signed it. And I'm not really, it's from the 50s, so I'm not sure if Jerry's, it kind of looks more like maybe Dean signed it, but I'm not sure. I would have to bring it out for you both to take a look, but I don't know. It looks to me like one person signed instead of both for the fan that they were signing to.
That could be the case.
But yeah, but either way, it was exciting to have that autograph from the 50s as well.
Yeah, especially from the 50s. Yeah,
in that case, I would like, if it's an earlier autograph, then obviously it's probably not going to have the date below. When do you think he started?
Yes, I've seen many. I think that started in the mid 70s. I've seen many autographs that he really did from the 60s, the 50s, and it doesn't have the date. So he started doing that, I'm going to say around 74, roughly.
That's good to know. I was going to ask Gary, do we know like who the photographer, like did he have different photographers, do you think, or that were following him around?
Yeah. So when Jerry would travel for an MDA thing, the local would have either a staff person or a hired photographer. In my case, I worked year round as their photographer. So I was the obvious choice to to shoot Jerry when he was in town. I had started, I think, in 1971 as a volunteer for the telethon. I was in a group from high school called Teens Against Dystrophy. And then I got into photography and then filmmaking. I went to school for filmmaking. But when Jerry traveled, the local would just get a photographer. When he was doing the telethon, of course, they had the same photographer. But wherever Jerry went, if it was announced, if they knew, you had several photographers from the TV companies or the local newspapers. They were around. So when we were at the press club, it wasn't just me. There were TV cameras and a couple of other photographers for whatever newspaper they were from. But I was the lucky one. I was living the dream. I was with him all day and into the evening. It just being with Jerry Lewis, my idol. And I was, it's like I was doing two things at the same time. I was the fan, just gaga and can't believe I have this luck, and I'm with him. And then I'm also the photographer that has a job to do. And I had to make sure I was watching carefully for the right photographic moment, him interacting with people he was meeting, the poster child, celebrities that were there, his wife and two of his sons were there. I have pictures, in my notebooks with them. So the whole weekends, both weekends in those 2 years were just something that I just never forget. And there's even moments where it was just me and Jerry and the director of the MDA office in San Francisco. We were in the hall, just the three of us. And I remember exactly what we said and the moment that Jerry, turned around and what he said to me. These are things that are just dream come trues for the big Jerry Lewis fan.
So, Gary, I have a question for you. Since you had several opportunities to meet with and interact with Jerry, did he ever indicate, "Oh, I remember you from last time"? Did he remember you?
No, a whole year went by. So if you think he's traveling year round and he's got photographers year round,
right,
in all the different cities, no. Now, here's the thing that I told Kaylee about when I had lunch with her. One particular afternoon, we were on our way to KTV News, and I was told to get into the limousine with Jerry. So it would be me, Jerry, and the driver. I'm getting in, my hand is on the door, and I'm getting into the car, and a hand on my shoulder pulls me away. And it's, I can't even say his name. He says, "No, I want to drive with Jerry." So I was told to go into the second limousine. And it was me and Pat Weaver, the president of MDA. And it was Jerry Weintraub, something, who you see on the telethons in the 1970s, year in and year out. His name, he's sitting there. I saw him once in Las Vegas when he was in the audience, and I had the first row for Jerry's show. I saw him there. I saw, all his inner circle people. So the very inner circle people, let's say there's 4 of them, 5 of them, and me. But the moment that I was getting into the limousine with Jerry, I could have talked to Jerry about photography, because on our way to the studio, he stops the cars, he runs into a camera store. Pat says to me, he's just going to come out with a new camera. He does this every time we drive by a camera store. He doesn't need it. He just goes in and he buys a camera. And he came out with a new camera. Now, had I been sitting in the limousine with him, I could have talked to him about that camera. We could have had such a fantastic conversation. And I would have so much more to tell you about anecdotes that will never be about discussing photography. I had my 2 Nikons with me, but he went out and got something, and I saw him put it together in the studio. And then, but those are the things that, could have happened, but still, I remember them to this day like they happened last week, and I love it. I love everything that happened to me, good or bad. That was the bad thing, because I was supposed to be in that limousine with Jerry, but it didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So who knows? But yeah, he didn't remember me, but obviously he talked to me through the weekends.
Right.
And and you know what? I want to tell you, he smelled great. You've heard about the cologne he wore. For years I wanted to buy that cologne. I didn't know what it was, and years later on, I think it was the old Jerry Lewis discussion group that Jose put together.
Yeah.
And then people knew what the cologne was, but they were saying it really wasn't the original. It was like a second generation or a third generation or whatever. Who knows what's true or not? But Jerry Lewis smelled fantastic.
But what is it?
Same thing about
like?
Dean Martin.
What does the aroma smell like? Is the question, I guess, for those who haven't.
God, I don't even, it smelled good, really great. I don't know. I can't say it was a floral smell or a manly smell. It was a unique smell because, I was wearing cologne by then, the whatever was popular in the time, but this was something that I had never smelled before, but it was just something like it caught your attention. It wasn't too much too much strength. It wasn't too lacking of something. It was a perfect smell. And that's what caught your attention. And I remember Merv Griffin talking about it and other people, celebrities talking about it.
Well, that goes back to the influence that Dean Martin had on young Jerry Lewis, because Dean used a cologne, I think it was called Wood Hue, that Jerry was very taken with how great Dean smelled, and he wanted to emulate his big brother.
Sure.
So he picked a different scent, but he would try Dean's cologne in the 50s when they were together. And I remember reading in Deanna Martin's book about her father that when Dean died, she went into his bathroom and there was the last bottle of Wood Hue. And she took it and she has it in a safe deposit vault. And every once in a while, she'll just smell it and it will bring back the vivid memories of her father because that was his scent.
Yeah. Yes, true.
I think I'm not sure if, because I took a look at Danielle Lewis's blog, and I think she mentioned something about her father's like aroma. Like, don't quote me on it, but I think from what I saw something about that as well, like her like smelling her dad's aroma throughout the house, basically, after he had passed. So that's sort of the same thing as Dina, but also what made me laugh is the whole Jerry anointing himself with Dean's Wood Hue in the book. Yeah. If you haven't read Dean and Me, what are you doing?
Yeah, there's a very funny story about that.
Where he's burning, literally.
Right.
Don't
running naked down a hotel corridor.
Yeah, just don't put cologne in certain places and you'll be fine.
Right.
That's the moral of the story, or the what you can take away from that. Okay, we got
when Jerry was. I was going to say, when Jerry was on the book tour for D&D, I met him at the Macy's doing when he was signing, and I've got pictures of that meeting. But earlier, I was listening to the radio, and he was going to be on a radio talk show, and I called in, and I got through, and I talked to Jerry on the radio, and then an hour later, I was standing in front of him, taking pictures of him doing the book signing. And our mutual friend David, who was at that time. What was his David's title when he worked for
he was a personal assistant, but he had some kind of a title as well. You're right.
Yeah. And David was there, and David whispers into Jerry's ear, and then Jerry turns to me and he says, "When are you going to pay him?" That was all about David had sent me a picture, an 11 by 14 picture of Jerry on the set of Hardly Working. And, he said, just pay me whatever, whenever you get around to it. Well, I had not gotten around to it. And so that's why he must have said, this is the guy that owes me money for a picture of you. You know? And I'm kind of embarrassed, but I'm kind of like proud that I had that extra moment with Jerry. And
Right.
Jerry said something to me about it. It was a joke. And I looked at his wife, and she was smiling. She knew about it too. That's just one of those great moments. Another moment in my life, meeting my idol again. You know, and this was after the shoots that I was with him. You know, I have these moments in my history of meeting my idol and just these different scenarios. Very lucky.
Yeah, like most fans, like you've got to experience what most fans haven't, for sure, or very
Right.
few. I don't know.
Streaming.
Yeah, I know Alan.
Yeah.
I mean, he got to like work with him on Slapstick of Another Kind. So you know that's
Yeah.
definitely about the same, I would say. And getting to work with him, I'm
And to
sure
me, that's
other
another
fans,
level.
yeah, other
Yeah,
fans,
I
you
didn't
know,
like
got
the
to work
movie,
with the
but I was,
MDA.
yeah, you know, I've had my great, you know, things, but when you interviewed Alan, I thought, oh my God, I'm a film person, and yes, I would like to get to that next level to be with Jerry on a film set and watch him as a filmmaker every day. So he has an extraordinary fan experience with Jerry, you know. So, but I mean, I guess we all fit into a certain level of fandom, and there's always someone that has a better story or a better experience with Jerry. I'm thankful for all the things that I've gotten to be with Jerry over the years, starting when I was in high school to when I was in my I don't know. The last time I saw him live was like probably when he was in Michigan uh, for a show. So I mean, it's like 4 decades of meeting and seeing Jerry Lewis in person. So I'm a lucky fan.
Yes, for sure. Okay, we got about 3.5 minutes before we go to a break. What is your favorite Martin and Lewis film? That goes to Gary up there. Before we go to
Okay, so
break.
right now I'm going to say artists and models, and this is because I flew to New Jersey when there was a new 35 millimeter print made, and I thought I've never seen a Martin and Lewis film on screen. TV, yes, but on a movie screen. And so I flew from Chicago to New Jersey, and I saw it, and it was just gorgeous to see them on a big screen. So that has stayed with me all this time. But you know, I love Living It Up is another one that I just absolutely adore. So I'll leave it at that. Rick, why don't you jump in?
I kind of had the same experience, Gary, where um yeah, we just never had an opportunity to see them on the big screen. But a 3D Society ran Money from Home in 3D with we're wearing the red and blue glasses. And that's one of their worst films. It's kind of hard to sit through. But on a big screen with a full auditorium of people laughing and actually seeing the dimensionality of the 3D,
Yeah.
I won't say that I loved it, but it was a great experience. It was a beautiful print. The 3D was perfect, and it was a blast. In the book, I call out their two best films as Sailor Beware and Living It Up. One in black and white, one in Technicolor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that when you see it on the big screen, that is adding a dimension that most of us do not have.
Yeah.
To see it on the big screen with an audience, and that's any movie going experience is better than any big screen theater that you have at home.
Yep.
And so I got to have that chance, and of course, Living It Up is to me just a tremendous film. I've always loved it.
For me, definitely story-wise, The Stooge and Living It Up are my two favorites, and it's just their best quality with the plot. Gag-wise, though, I gotta say The Caddy and Sailor Beware are their two funniest. just for like the amount of like laughs and just hilarity. But yeah, definitely the other two, plot wise, if you want drama and comedy together, both, then both of those films
Forget it both.
are good. Yes. So we're back with memorabilia. Come on, this was heavy to bring around the corner, but yes, look at this. It's a huge thing over here. The Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis babushka scarf. That last time when Rick was on, he mentioned it. I was like, I've never seen it, and then a fan, a very great fan, Joe Patrici, sent this to me for free, and that's just like the most wonderful gift. Look at their lips are blue for some reason, and you got Jerry with red hair over here. I don't think you can kind of tell, but he has reddish and black hair. And then I'm not sure what's are they, is this a submarine? It looks like it's a submarine. I don't know what this is. But that's, yeah, I don't know what the design is here. That looks like just like a thing that you find at not a spatula. It's like a flipper with a grill. And
yeah.
Let's see. Dini is a meanie. Oh, solo mio. I like it. And then you got crazy down here. You got a bunch of different sayings. Up there is I made a boo-boo. And more crazy. What else? What? Oh, we got the ho ho, that's rich up in this corner. And
all the catchphrases.
Yeah, all the catchphrases. I don't know what is going on. What does it even say up there? Are you cats? Oh, something. I'm not even sure what this actually says right here, but are you cats doing? I don't know. I don't remember that phrase, but that is there, whatever it is. So yeah, it's got a bunch of.
I do like the fact that Rick used those catchphrases in his book here and there. If you know enough about Martin and Lewis, there's catchphrases in the text.
Yeah, and I appreciate that they say young America's favorite comedians, because they're both comedians. They're not just, Dean's not just a singer, he's a comedian also. So that was, and it has a year up here, 1952. So that's exciting.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Kaylee, because I'm just finishing a book on Abbott and Costello, which is the sequel to the Martin and Lewis book, the same treatment, but with the previous comedy team.
Yeah.
And I talk a lot about how Bud Abbott was the greatest straight man who ever lived. And I say that because Dean Martin was not a straight man. And I quoted this in the Martin and Lewis book, and I re-quoted in the Abbott and Costello book that when the new writers came on board to the Colgate, Jerry's very specific instructions to them were, we are not a comedian and a straight man. Write for us as if we are two comics. A very telling comment from Jerry about his partnership with Dean circa 1952.
Yeah. But then, nobody, I think Jerry partially fed into the Dean was a straight man, though, because, he always, maybe it's because he just went along with it because everybody else said Dean was a straight man. But, Jerry definitely said he's the greatest straight man ever or whatever. And so, he fed into that as well. But yeah, they were definitely, I mean, Dean did obviously do a straight man role, but he also did the comic role, and that's what made him unique.
Yeah, he set up a lot of the stuff for Jerry to react to.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
and in the movies, Kaylee's right. Those are pretty much straight men parts. But on the Colgate, and when they were live, they were both bouncing off the walls
Mhm.
at times.
Yeah. I mean, when like you're setting up a joke, then yeah, I would say like he was the straight man. If you're setting up a specific joke, there has to be sometimes, someone that is setting it up and someone that's delivering that line. So there is a straight man aspect to that part anyway, even on Colgate or their movies or wherever they were performing. But yeah, so that was an exciting gift, and I definitely want to hang it up. It's just on sitting against the wall right now, but I need to eventually put it up on the wall and put my other things up on the wall for sure. The other piece of memorabilia that I have, it's not a Martin Lewis thing per se, but it's Jerry's photo book. I have two of these ones from 1955, and this was actually in his home, and like a lot of these photo books, I don't know if you can really see him there, but yeah, were sold off by the Lewis family for some reason. We're not going to get into that, but I don't know why they would sell off all these beautiful photos, family photos even, that are in the ones that I have. There we go. So this is from 1955 in Miami, 5 years before he would film. This is also some of these were at the Fontainebleau. 5 years before he would film The Bellboy. So there's that. And there is footage on my channel. I think it's on the Don Azify channel, which is my secondary channel, from this event. I love this one. Some of these, like, he just looks like he's about to come to life through the photos. Like, they just look so, like you're right there, basically. My favorite, though, let's see. Oh, this is one of my favorites too, but he's taken video or taking film footage anyway.
Yeah.
And we have, let's see, there's one that's my absolute favorite photo of all time. Let's see where it's at.
Those pictures of Jerry with a camera of some sort are among my favorite, probably because I became a cameraman, a photographer. So I love the photos. I just recently saw on one of the Facebook pages of Jerry when he was playing with the Dodgers for the Geisha Boy. And there are all these pictures of him holding his film camera, taking shots. And I just love those.
Yeah,
I don't
me
remember
too.
who posted. There's a lot of them, and I've never seen those before. I've seen a few from that shoot, but there were so many new pictures that, and I would love to have a a real still from, there, and also to comment why Danny and Sam, his wife and daughter, decided to sell off that stuff. We
That's
don't know
not
what they kept.
it, this wasn't sold by them though. This was sold by Anthony Lewis's ex-wife. They used to this is basically what Patty had. So it was left over from the I guess Jerry didn't have it after the divorce and everything. So they sell a bunch of stuff from Patty and Jerry's their years together, like awards. I think Sam and Danny, they did it for financial reasons, and because they just had so much stuff and they couldn't keep it. I mean, where they were
Really,
going
why keep
to.
it? I mean, that's the point. Why keep it? They know that fans want this stuff. They have their own that they're going to cherish and keep. But when you have such an abundance of material, you got to let go. Otherwise, it gets dumped in the trash. If nobody in the family wants it, I'm sure everyone in the family has something, but there was just so much that he had, that family members, for one reason or another, whether it was just financial or just to share it like I do, just it's time for a new owner. I don't see anything wrong with it. It's just it's going to a new fan.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the family photos thing is just like that's your family. So I don't
but
know.
how do we know that they don't have a copy for themselves? That's what I'm saying. They might have copies. They might have other versions. We take pictures 2 or 3 at a time of the same
Mhm.
thing. So these are just duplicates, let's say. We don't know. We're just
Yeah,
fans. We're not in the family. What I
yeah.
tell people that are the big fans are, to me, sometimes overstepping their bounds. You're a fan. You
Mm.
don't know what the family was thinking, what they were going through. You
Yeah, for
do what
sure.
you do, but we're not family members. We love the Martin and Lewis legacy and the careers and the people, but we don't have the inside track of what they were going through or what their reasons were. It's done, and I don't see anything wrong with it because I
Yeah.
like to think they have enough that they kept.
Yeah.
We assume they kept something to love. They love the man.
Yeah.
So,
You would hope that
I'm very positive about it.
that
Yeah.
one's my favorite. That's the ultimate favorite photo of him. It's just like he's right there, and it's just the color
Yeah.
you can't really tell on video here, but like in person, it's just like his eyes are kind of like glowy in a way.
Hmm.
And yeah, I don't know.
Good photograph.
Yeah, what a great
And
photo.
that's going back to Rick's book. When the color version came out, I was just gaga at the colors because those magazine covers, those lobby cards that I had, they're reproduced so beautifully. It was like, oh yeah, I remember how excited I was when I bought that comic book or that magazine, whatever, or even like Tuck Tape. All that stuff, it just comes to life when it's colorized. I loved it in black and white. That was a different reason. The colorization in the book gives another dimension of reality. And for me, it's like, oh yeah, I had that in my hands. I had that magazine. So the new book is a must-have. Even if you don't have the book, just skip the black and white one, go get the color one because it is so worth it. And it's an instant
And
collection.
Are they
you can
selling
no
them?
longer get it in
Yeah,
black and white.
yeah.
It's been replaced or upgraded with this color version. And when the Abbott and Costello comes out this summer, it's only going to be in hardback. We're not even going to bother putting out a paperback because there was like $2 or $3 difference. You might as well get it
Right.
in hardback and preserve it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the I know some fans were like, oh, well, what do we do? Is there anything that they can do if they had the black and white one and then they like, is there from Bear Manor at least any discount or?
So let me talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up. It because I don't want people to think it's a money grab. I made them all buy it in black and white, and now they all have to buy it again in color. First of all, there's nothing wrong with the original version of Marketing Mayhem. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of copies out there. It's a great book, and the images are very vivid in black and white. But this wasn't my original vision for this book. I wanted it to have color, but my publisher told me I don't do color books. I said, can there be a middle section with color pages? No color. So this is what we put out just almost exactly 1 year ago. However, if you look at this masterful collection of imagery, that's a lot of ink, a lot of black ink. So the paper that most books these days are print on demand, unless you're Stephen King or John Grisham, almost any book you buy on Amazon is POD, print on demand. So all of this ink was jamming up the presses. It was causing issues for Amazon. They pulled it down and they told Bear Manor, we're not going to sell this book anymore unless you upgrade the paper so it holds the ink better. That means it's going to cost more. So the $50 book becomes a $100 book. That's when I said to the publisher, we can't sell the same book for twice as much just because the paper's changing. Please tell me I can do color now. Oh yeah, on this paper you can do color. Well, why didn't you tell me that 6 months ago? So I had to go back, and I felt like I wrote the book twice. I was right in the middle of doing Abbott and Costello, and I had to revisit Martin and Lewis, which in my mind was finished. And there's over 1,000 images in this book. I was able to upgrade more than 300 of the 1,000 images to full color. And they're not colorized. They're the actual color items, the one-sheet posters, the lobby card sets, many of the still photos, the magazine covers, all of the poster art and lobby cards. It's all in full color now. I think it's around 325, 330 images. And I actually did switch out about a half a dozen images with different images for this edition. I'll give you an example. Hopefully I can find it super quick from, I think it's Jumping Jacks. Let's see if I can get over there. This amazing 40 by 60 is not in the original version because the red would have made it too dark. But in the color version, I switched out whatever was on that page with this gorgeous poster that's now in the full color edition. Why? Because I could. So there are some differences, not a lot, maybe a half a dozen, but you can see it's half an inch thicker than the original version. It even stretched out the logo a little bit. It's a little distorted because it expanded so much from this thicker paper stock to hold the ink better. So you don't have to buy the new version. If you have the black and white one, enjoy it. But if you're a true fan, I mean, I think you're going to want both. No, there's no discounts or anything. It's just kind of, it is what it is. But now this color version, and Kaylee, you have to get it. You're going to love it. The color looks great, and it fulfills my original vision for what this book was meant to be. I couldn't be prouder of the work on Marketing Mayhem, and I'm just as excited for this summer's sequel, Advertising Anarchy, selling Bud Abbott and Lou Costello to war-torn America. It's their whole careers, not just the 40s. But so it's going to be the same thing. I'm just finishing it up right now. So if I look tired and sound croaky, blame it on Bud and Lou.
You know, I want to mention that when we were talking about, you know, when you were compiling the book and still writing it, I pleaded with you to have them print color and do not edit out so many pictures. To me, this was a book that had to display as many images and pictures as possible. And you accomplished that. Now that we have a color version, it's even better because they took the real estate that they had to work with on the page and they used it. I mean, we have pictures that go edge to edge on some pages, and that's just great because nothing's cropped. It's so beautiful that I can't highly recommend it to the Martin and Lewis fan enough, that this book is a must-have for your collection. So it kind of guides you if you want to be a collector too. It also gives you the history that you're, you know, probably not going to be aware of if you're of a certain age. It's a great learning volume of their history, as well as a picture book.
And even Leonard Maltin reviewed the original version on his Movie Crazy website, and he's one of the great collectors of all time, and he loved Martin Lewis and Jerry Lewis growing up, and has a huge collection just because he loved that was his comedy team when he was a kid. And he makes the comment in his review that he would look at things that he has in his collection and see things that are not in his collection. And one specific thing he called out was the Al Hirschfeld artwork utilized in My Friend Irma, the first Martin and Lewis film. He says he had never seen any of that before, and it blew him away that even existed, and he had no knowledge of it. So Gary's right. You go through this book and you're going to see stuff you've never seen before and didn't even know existed. Even Kaylee has seen stuff that she didn't know existed. The whole point of these books is to exceed expectations, to go over the top and create a massive amount of eye candy for the fans, to page to page to page. Jim Nyber also reviewed the book. One of the great film authors. I think he's written 40 or 50 books, and even he said in his review, there's a surprise on every page. That's such a great compliment. It's just what I was going for.
Yeah, I discovered so much in the ad slicks in the Paramount, the booklets that went out to the theater owners. I had those, and yet by looking at your book in detail, I had this very thing. Yet there was so much detail in the artwork that I never really paid attention to, didn't discover it until I looked at your book. So for me, there's so much knowledge in this book that, you know, thinking, hey, I'm a longtime collector of 50 years. And yet, even though I had some of that stuff, a lot of it, I didn't see it. I don't know why, but this book brought out detail of a lot of the artwork and the ad campaigns, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, well, you have a lot of stuff to look at for sure, and that you probably hadn't looked at in a long time. Also,
Yeah,
it just brought back memories, and that's great to hear that even for you, yeah, you still gain a lot from just reading and seeing the images and imagery in Rick's book.
Yeah, absolutely.
And will the Abbott and Costello book be around the same length, or you think even more?
It's funny you say that because just yesterday I counted all the pages and I counted and numbered all the images. It's going to be exactly the same 720 pages and exactly 1,000 plus images in the Abbott and Costello book. Now I will say they made 36 films where Martin and Lewis made 16, more than double. So there's lots more posters and rare ads and stuff promoting their films. But what I didn't have to do for Abbott and Costello that I had to do for Martin and Lewis, there's no solo Bud and solo Lou chapters. Lou Costello made one film without Bud Abbott, and Bud Abbott made no films without Lou Costello. I didn't have to do those chapters. There's also no recordings chapters. They only put out a couple of records. So I put all that stuff into the merchandise chapter. So there are fewer chapters in this book, but the chunk that covers the 36 films fills up more than 3/4 of the book, where in Marketing Mayhem, it's a little more balanced because they had such rich solo careers that are also covered in that book. Great question.
Yeah. And you didn't have to discuss any reunion or any after stuff because
Although it's funny you make that comment because there's a lot of similarities between the two teams, and of course the two books, they're laid out exactly the same. But in the final chapter, which in both books is called Legacy, I go off into kind of a fantasy land place with Abbott and Costello. Lou Costello was so young when he died, like 53, and he was plagued with health issues his whole life. I kind of imagine what if he wasn't in such bad health? What if he lived another 20 or 30 years? He could have. What if Abbott and Costello reunited in 1969 on the Hollywood Palace, hosted by Jack Benny? And I go into this little fantasy reunion. Of course, that never happened. Just as a fan, fantasizing, what would it have been like? How did the audience react? How many people filled the seats? I mean, it just a few paragraphs. I indulged myself. Maybe it's silly, but the fans, maybe they'll get a little choked up the way I describe what might have happened.
were there? I'm not like I don't even think I've seen any Abbott and Costello films. But uh, obviously I've seen their skits, but a few of them from the Colgate Comedy Hour. Um, was there any, I guess, similarities of how they broke up versus how Martin and Lewis broke up?
Yes, there were, and in fact, they begged Martin and Lewis not to break up. Look, we've stayed together, and we've had the same kind of differences you two have had. And 6 months after Martin and Lewis break up, that's when Abbott and Costello broke up. They were playing Vegas a lot. They had made their last film. They weren't getting along great, and Lou said to Bud, shouldn't we just call it quits at this point? And Bud said, if that's how you want it, Lou. And Lou said, yeah, that's how I want it. So it wasn't quite as acrimonious as the Martin and Lewis split, but they never spoke again after they broke up. They didn't hang out. They loved each other like brothers, just like Dean and Jerry did. But they had done everything that they set out to do, and there was no need to have reunions or revisit anything. And then, of course, Lou died a year later, so there was no opportunity for it anyways.
Would you say that they were funnier live or in their films?
Very much like the Martin and Lewis team, that they were at their funniest live in front of an audience. They were both Colgate Comedy Hour hosts. They both kill on the Colgate Comedy Hour. Those kinescopes of both teams show us just how wildly hilarious they both were in front of live audiences. But Martin and Lewis came to be on the nightclub circuits. Abbott and Costello came to be coming out of vaudeville, going into burlesque. Kind of the same proving ground for these two comedy teams, which led to radio shows, which led to movies. A lot of similarities. But it's, yeah, Martin and Lewis had that sex appeal and that rock level popularity that Abbott and Costello didn't quite have. So when Martin and Lewis broke up, they were on the cover of everything. The world was infatuated with them. And Abbott and Costello were, oh yeah, that team that was popular during the war that still happened to be together. So they didn't get anywhere near as much coverage as Martin and Lewis got. But still, they both broke up within 6 months of each other.
Yeah, and that's why I try to point out to people, like, sometimes in the comment section, people are like, Abbott, because like Martin Lewis doesn't come anywhere close to Abbott and Costello or wherever. I guess, like, I don't know what they're trying to say. Like, in the money their films made, they made about the same. It just depends on the film.
The Martin and Lewis movies made bigger box office in the 50s than most of the Abbott and Costellos made in the 40s. It's 10 years later, ticket prices are higher, and there were more people going to movies in the mid 50s. However, and I say this in my introduction to the Abbott and Costello book, I'm attracted. I have love for the Martin and Lewis team that it's not quite the same with Abbott and Costello. I'm attracted to creators of comedy. Chaplin, Keaton, Stan Laurel, W.C. Fields created their characters, wrote their own scripts, and for the most part, directed their own films. Abbott and Costello wrote nothing. They were hired to perform other people's scripts, and they weren't creations of the cinema. Keaton, Laurel and Hardy, Chaplin, they're creations of the cinema. Martin and Lewis Jerry Lewis is a creator, a writer, a director. Even in the Martin and Lewis era, he created the team, he wrote the bits, and Dean went along with it the same way Oliver Hardy went along with it when Stan Laurel did the exact same thing. Abbott and Costello were not creators of comedy. So I had to wrap my head around, this is why I don't feel that love that I feel for Martin and Lewis and Laurel and Hardy. Abbott and Costello are a straight man and a comedian doing routines. Now, they do them better than anyone else ever did them. That's why we still remember them and celebrate them today. Everyone else who did that stuff is forgotten. So once I came to terms with that, so to speak, I could then appreciate the guy who wrote most of their stuff, John Grant, is like the George Martin, the fifth Beatle, so to speak, of the Abbott and Costello machine. He wrote all the stuff and put the routines into the films and then produced the films, and was critically important to the straight man and the comic who had to become cinema actors. It's not where they came from, like Buster Keaton and the others from the silent films moving into sound. Do you see, Gary? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally
okay,
agree.
good.
Yeah, because I had that same feeling towards the teams. I mean, you and I are on like the same train. you know,
Good.
and I understand everything that you say, because that's exactly the way I felt growing up and watching them, movies, TV, radio, and and as I got to learn about them, later on in life, and what their careers were about, where they came from, it all made sense. Like, this is what I'm attracted to, the exact same thing.
Good. In Abbott and Costello, Bud Abbott is mean to him. He takes advantage of him. There's no warmth really in that relationship. There's a few brief examples in some of the films where it goes there, and it's almost shocking, before they shift back to slapping and so on. But I didn't want it to sound like I'm diminishing Bud Abbott. He was the greatest straight man who ever lived, and he kept Lou focused and funny. He did his job better than anyone else could have.
Yeah, their formula worked for them.
I'm not sure why like films decided to do, like, or filmmakers or the script writers or whoever decided to put like the comedy, like it's the same thing with like Bing Crosby and Bob Hope. Like, Bing Crosby is sort of a jerk sometimes, like, and the comic, whoever he may be, always is coming off as sympathetic. Why can't they both be sympathetic? I guess why does there have to be this tension? Why is the singer or the straight man always going off with the girl and like stealing? Like Dean was like stealing Jerry's girl sometimes in the films. Like Bing was always stealing Dorothy Lamour away from Bob Hope, and it's like, why do you have to do, like, make one of them the kind of jerk or the bad guy? And that was like the problem obviously Dean had in their films, is he looked like a jerk sometimes,
or a heel. He was often a heel in the Martin and Lewis films. And Bud Abbott, even more so. He would get a girl sometimes just because it made Lou a more pathetic figure, and it made him more relatable, and people felt sorry for him. That's good. That they wanted to create that dynamic. Lou was very good at getting people to care about him, to want him to succeed, to want him to get the girl. And once in a while, when that happened, it just felt really good because it was such a rare occurrence.
You had to have those opposing forces too, the highs and lows.
Yeah.
The mean guy, the sympathetic, protagonist, antagonist. If they were on the same level for the entire picture, it would be flat. You have to have, things that are fighting forces to work with. And that's where the comedy came in, and all the others, because you had to have two different characters doing something. They can't be exactly the same, otherwise you got a flat story.
Although I will say, Bud Abbott sure slaps Lou Costello a lot. It gets a little troublesome after a while, where Dean would smack Jerry once in a while, not that much. And even with Laurel and Hardy, they'd push and shove like little kids arguing. But man, Bud Abbott just would smack that poor little fat guy all the time.
Well, it worked for the Three Stooges.
Yeah.
So they all these teams had a different character that they were playing with, and it worked for Bud and Lou, or it wouldn't work, continuously with Martin and Lewis. Three Stooges, that's what they were all about.
That was their shtick. And with Abbott and Costello,
guys, we're gonna quickly take
their roots were
a time.
Oh, right. Okay.
We're gonna take a break and be right back. Anyway,
pick a nice avatar.
Huh?
Pick a nice avatar.
Yeah.
You can drop it in when you edit.
Going back, I guess my point was like, where we left off was like, maybe not all the time making Dean look like a heel, because he pretty much was like that in every movie. Maybe vary it up a little bit, but I think that's probably the issue he had as well. just get better scripts and
Yep.
you not have to do that as much. Obviously, you know, some stuff like I appreciated it in The Stooge, where that was actually a good character direction, I thought, for Dean anyway, even if he
It
yeah,
worked for the storyline.
yeah, it just worked for the
Yeah.
storyline.
But until the writers really got to know Martin and Lewis and what they were capable of, they were just, starting with a basic premise character that they threw it to Dean. And, I mean, eventually they learned that he didn't have to be that kind of a character from A to Z throughout the movie. But it took a while.
Well,
If you
all
look at the two My Friend Irma
yeah,
films, Dean is very likable,
yeah,
very
that's what I'm saying.
easygoing. He's not a jerk at all. And then at War with the Army, he's cranky and nasty and doesn't treat Jerry well at all. And that's the character that they went with instead of the Steve character from My
Yeah.
Friend Irma.
Which, I mean, that was their production, but I mean, I don't know how close it was following the stage play there, but like, that's the direction they decided to go in themselves, unfortunately, and then everybody else decided to go along that pathway. But yeah, that's probably the most unlikable of all of his films. That Dan is just nasty, just like for no
Really,
reason.
really cranky. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for no reason. You're right.
it's like, why do you have this
Was,
attitude? What was it?
wasn't it your book that said it was at war with the Army? There's just no known good prince. So it just doesn't look fun to watch.
Well, that is part of the struggle with sitting through that movie is there's so many crappy public domain DVDs and VHS tapes of that film. Paramount has the original negative in their vaults. They could have put it on the volume 1 of the Martin and Lewis DVD set, but they chose not to because there were 200 copies of it out there already that looked terrible. They should have, and they didn't. So the Blu-ray that came out from Olive Films or one of those companies is a very good print, but it's not the original camera negative which Paramount has. So hopefully we'll see a great print of it, which will make it easier to watch, but it won't make the movie any better.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Let's go back to Rick. Do you have any other memorabilia from your collection you'd like to show?
I do. I have some stuff around here, but I wanted to just point out like a good example of the upgrade from black and white to color. In the original book, the partner sections opens with this gorgeous ad, which most people had never seen before. But when I was able to do the color upgraded version, I substituted that for the press book cover because it's the exact same ad, but it's in this beautiful rich yellow color. So that's just an example of the upgrade. So I do have some stuff. In fact, this I bought from Gary from his collection a few months ago. I never had this, and now I do. And it joins my Never Smile at a Crocodile, which is another one of the Bozo Capital. These are 78s. They're not 45s. They're gigantic. And then I grabbed this notepad right before the book came out. I picked up this gorgeous 5x7 notepad, which, what is it, 10 cents in 1952. And so it appeared in black and white in the first version, but now it's in color in the new version. And another thing that got upgraded, they sold these sepia toned autographed 8x10s. They're not really autographed. And for $5.50, you'd get 1,000 of these. I have one, and I paid a lot more than that for it. But in the color version of the book, it's in this same rich sepia print, and it looks exactly like this. So Gary made a comment on the We Love Jerry Lewis Facebook group that buying the color version of the book is like getting an instant Martin and Lewis collection. And so you literally get this as a full page image in the correct sepia coloring. So that was a very accurate statement. This is something, it's actually not even in the book. One year, Martin and Lewis, probably at Jerry's instigation, sent out this Christmas card with the classic logos, of course, that were done for the Colgate Comedy Hour. And then a year later for Christmas, they actually used the same logos and made these Christmas tree cardboard ornaments. They're huge. I knew about these, but I had never seen them, and I won them in an auction lot, and they came framed from the guy's collection, and they're just ginormous. Now, these drawings by a guy named Bernard something or another are masterful. Jerry loved them so much, these became the Martin and Lewis logo, and that became the Jerry Lewis logo to his very dying day. The same artist drew Abbott and Costello for their Colgate appearances, and it's god awful. It is not an attractive logo. So I drew my own Colgate style Abbott and Costello logo to be used in the new book, and it came out great. And it's based, and Gary will know this name, it's based on a drawing by Al Kilgore, one of the founders of our Laurel and Hardy organization. So I give Al full credit, but I had to draw my own kind of version of those logos that I could use in the book on all the chapters and on the spine and so on. So you'll see that when the book comes out.
Cool.
And then one other thing I have, and this is really freaky weird looking. A guy does wood art, and again, I bought a big lot of stuff, and this was in there. I didn't want it, but I have it. Look at this. Isn't that weird?
No,
Look at Dean is like 1970s Dean, and Jerry's 1950s Jerry. It's just really freaky looking, but it's in my collection.
They've got really muscular faces.
And nice rich wooden tans.
Yes. Well, much later they would both be very tan, so
Yes.
that's what he was probably
So
going.
that's what I grabbed for show and tell. Do you have anything else, Gary?
Yeah,
that
really
you
quickly, this is one of my prized possessions. It's from the script. It says script back here. There's the date. Let me see if you can read that. Anyways, well, to get to the point, it's a proof sheet from the Nutty Professor when Jerry is turning into the monster. And I've got a few pages of this. I found several of these in a store in San Francisco, and I bought them all. So I've got another like 4 or 5, and there's one with Stella Stevens, who we just lost recently. Let me see if I can show that real quickly. Still have it in the booklet, but there's Stella and Jerry. Different,
Wow.
poses. But what I love is that they were stamped by the photographer and from somebody's script, and it made its way to a dealer in San Francisco. And I bought these probably in the 1980s, early 80s. So I've had these for a long time.
You usually don't see that many Buddy Love moments on the lobby cards or just regular set photos, or not on the set photos, that's something different, but like shooting buddy love scenes, because I guess maybe you just wanted
Yeah.
to be a surprise.
Well,
Obviously,
yeah,
Exactly.
like you see.
that was part of the ad campaign.
Yeah.
You could reveal the beginning, you can reveal the end of the movie, but please don't reveal the middle of the movie. That was part of their ad campaign, which as a little boy, because it's 1963, I thought, well, what does that mean? Nobody ever did that before. You're just not supposed to tell the ending of a movie. But this ad campaign, and said it right on the posters, please do not, reveal the middle. Even in the trailer, when I went to see some other movie, and there was a trailer for The Nutty Professor, don't reveal the middle, which worked perfectly for a little kid, because you always want to reveal something, and that's what just hooked me.
And to me, I'm positive that was a Jerry Lewis idea. That's the kind of nutty gag that back then, like when Psycho came out,
Yeah.
don't reveal the ending of this picture. When you see what Mrs. Bates really is, don't reveal the beginning. So in Jerry's mind, I'm going to say don't reveal the middle. So I bet he instructed the Paramount publicity men, this is what I want the ad campaign to be.
And another person who did that, I think, is it William Castle? Is that guy? He's like a horror beam.
Yes.
Horror guy.
The gimmicks of William Castle. Yep.
Yeah, like
yeah.
You have
Smell-o-vision,
seconds to leave the theater if you don't. It's like ticking down. The clock, the heart.
Or they'd have a nurse in the lobby in case someone dies of fright and stuff like that. Hype, ballyhoo, they called it.
You kind of wish that would come back in some way, because that's fun anyway. Back to
it is fun. Those were more innocent times, and that kind of stuff worked. I just wonder, with the jaded world we live in, if people would even pay attention to that kind of thing.
No. This is like a photography by Bill Crespinell. This was during the filming, or it's from the filming of the Ladies' Man, but it was like, I think he was doing the movie score, and some of these, let's see, there's just people looking in through the window, and it's their reflection that you see, and then the camera is aimed at Jerry inside, going over the instrumentation that he wants and everything. So I don't know if you can, hopefully you can see, Rick, it's not glitching on you, but yeah, so it's cool to see people's reflection and their reaction to watching Jerry in action there. I want a friend. Oh, and you also see Bill Richmond. Bill Richmond's right there.
A moment ago, Gary mentioned Stella Stevens, and she's someone that I met and got to know, because she would attend the Hollywood collector shows and have a table and sell photos that she could autograph to the fans. And I happened to be at one of the shows, and I brought with me an 8x10 full color contact negative of an iconic image of Professor Kelp and Miss Purdy, with all the test tubes and whatnot in the background. And it was not a negative, but it was on negative material, so you could hold it up and see it in color. And I showed it to her, and she said, I've got to make prints from this. This is the still I've been looking for. Will you loan it to me? And Gary can attest, for us to part with something that's really rare to someone we don't really know that well is a hard thing to do. But I did. I gave it to her at that show, and she took down my address. She says, I'm going to make 100 or 200 prints, and I'll send it back to you. And I believed her. And sure enough, a month or so later, a package came from Stella Stevens, and my original 8x10 negative was in there, which I still own. And she put in a bunch of photos that she signed to me and thanked me and put some articles. I mean, she just filled it up with stuff. And I thought, that is a classy woman. She was true to her word. She took care of my memorabilia, and she sent me a bunch of free stuff to say thank you. So nice.
Yeah,
awesome.
very nice. Would have loved to have met her. Yeah. Speaking of
Yeah.
the Nutty Professor, here's one more for, what was the name of the drink? And this is Buddy Love.
Alaskan
A polar bear.
Alaskan polar bear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there he is. I think, let's see, there's one of these where you can actually see the photographer. There he is. There's the photographer on the corner of the frame taking pictures of this scene with Buddy Lester as the bartender.
Yeah.
But was just great in that scene.
He was. He's great in The Ladies' Man too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Going back to Stella briefly, I guess she had tried to become a director, and people around that time were just not, wanting, like, very helpful to her becoming a director. I think the only one who definitely, like, showed her stuff about photography and to do with the camera was Jerry. I think he was probably one of the only people that encouraged her that was a director themselves. And that was sad because, like, she shared a few of her ideas about what she had wanted to do as a film, and it wasn't going to get the backing or whatever. I think she probably could have, like, gone more of independent filmmaking at that time wasn't really a thing, probably, like, as it is now. Well, Jerry, I guess, was a sort of independent filmmaker when he was making those home movie parodies at home. Home movie parodies at home. Yeah, the movie parodies at home. But she didn't have the money or the equipment probably to really see that,
or the studio connection.
Yeah.
She was considered an actress and not anything but an actress. She was put in a category.
Yeah.
Early 60s, so she had limited power to break out of the actress role, whereas there were some other actresses that became directors even before the 60s and the 50s.
I mean, there were female directors, but then by the time of, well, there's Ida Lupino, and so
Ida Lupino, yeah.
I think as a comedy director, people weren't gonna put money necessarily behind that. She was
they wouldn't take a pretty face seriously, in other words. Yes, back at the time, Jerry very much took her under his wing, was grooming her to be a certain kind of star, and they had a torrid affair during the production of Nutty Professor,
and afterwards,
and that friendship continued until she took a job working with Dean Martin on The Silencers, the first Matt Helm film, and Jerry was not happy that she was being a traitor and working with his ex, and he ended the affair, and he stopped speaking to her.
I mean,
I think for quite some time.
I mean, that's a possibility. That might have also been like something that he was upset about. But I had also heard, now whether it's true or not, it came from the Jerry's secretary, who was going to write a book, but she had said that Stella wanted him to marry her, and she wanted more from the relationship, but he wasn't going to leave Patty for sure. So I think it was,
Yeah,
I've heard
that could be true.
From 2 to 5 years that they had a relationship. It was a long time. So that was, I don't know. I don't know.
You guys are much more well informed than I am. I never heard any of this stuff. I'll have to read this in Rick's next book.
I mean, it
Well,
was in the
I mean,
National Enquirer, but like his
yeah.
secretary was
Oh.
going to write a book, and some of the stuff does check out of what they were also saying. So who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jerry even bragged about a lot of that himself.
Oh yeah.
But my books, both Martin and Lewis and Abbott and Costello, are celebrations of the work and the way they were promoted. And I don't go into any of the sultry things or the rumors and the gossipy stuff. There's a lot, as we all know, as it relates to both Dean and Jerry.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's for other types of books.
Yeah.
Not a lot of Abbott and Costello stuff in that way. But
Yeah.
boy, when Jerry was done with Stella, he moved right on to Janet Leigh and had a torrid affair with her.
Oh, okay.
Much to Tony Curtis's displeasure.
Well, I mean, they weren't married. Her and Tony weren't married at that time anymore. But
they weren't, but Tony was pretty pissed about it.
I had heard that that's okay. I had always thought that something went wrong with their friendship earlier in the 50s, and that's why they weren't friends anymore. But I wasn't sure if it was something to do with Janet or not, but possibly it could be.
Well, it could have been, Kat, because Tony made a film with Dean, and Jerry just thought of that as a betrayal. He was a complicated guy up in that head. So it could have stemmed from the comedy that the two of them made together, which was a great film with Janet Leigh also in it. But boy, when I was in Jerry's warehouse in Los Angeles in the early 80s, one of the things that I saw that just shocked me were he had taken pictures of Janet Leigh from the mid 60s when they were making Three on a Couch, and not hundreds of pictures, thousands of slides, and not just casual pictures, very glamorous, very romantic. You could see the eye looking through the camera at this woman was infatuated with her, and he took thousands and thousands and they were all there in these boxes, and it's just evidence that that
Yeah.
he went from Stella to Janet, and he fooled around a lot.
Speaking of,
he smelled that good.
He smelled
there
good.
you go. Speaking of Jerry loving girls, here's the I Love Girls outtake that I fought for, and it cost me $500 to get that. Sane. It was originally going for 250, I think, and then someone the eBay seller stopped, like suddenly like stopped the auction, and I was like, okay, I had bid on that. Why did you stop it before the auction was over? And then he's like, someone from the Lewis camp told me I couldn't sell this. Okay, and I was like, well, like I will pay more if that's the issue. I'll pay more. And then the person from the Lewis camp was going to outbid me, and he was going to give it to him. But I was like, I've already bid. This guy did not bid, like on eBay. So we're running out of time. But long story short, somehow I got him to give it to me, and he was like, they were just going to not like to hide it away somewhere for some reason. He doesn't even really like say that bad of, you know, language. So, but I'll get back to this in a moment. It did cause controversy, and it is part of the caddy outtakes incident. So we'll get back to that in a moment.
And we're back.
um, so anyway, finishing off that story, not sure why they wanted to hide it away, but back in 1955, well, I think it was 1955. It was definitely a couple of years after both the caddy outtakes, the infamous caddy outtakes where they're just swearing up a storm, along with the I Love Girls outtake is included, they don't mention it by name, but it's like included at the very end of the like the transcript of the caddy outtakes that they had, like, you know, they had censored it in their magazine. It's one of the scandal magazines at the time. And this one I don't think was included in your book, Rick, but I did send it, I think, to you for consideration, but it basically could have hurt their careers. And the FBI did take notice. I can tell you that it's in their FBI files, the caddy outtakes and I Love Girls, for like, it's just two guys goofing around and saying some swear words. Why is this on anybody's FBI files? I don't know, but in the after Jerry broke up with Dean, he wanted to do a series on the FBI, a weekly series or something, and sort of be the producer of that. And the FBI did an investigation and said, no, we can't allow him to be anything, like have anything to do with the FBI, like like a representation on screen or anything, because of this record. And also because some gay guy had implicated them as also known homosexuals, was the term. Have either of you seen these FBI files?
No,
well,
never even heard of them.
Well, they're online, the FBI.gov. You can see. For years, Jerry's name was censored out until after he passed. But we had all, me and other fans, had assumed it was Jerry since, you know, he was on those records. But yeah, so they thought just because some guy assumed that they were gay, maybe because of stuff on stage, I don't know, that they couldn't work with them in any capacity. And they were kind of, you know, there was sort of a blacklist, I suppose, if you want to call it that, where the FBI, like on quite a few occasions, there was like at least 2 or 3 occasions where someone like marked, oh, we can't work with them because of these reasons. it's really strange. It's really strange, but definitely, it could have ended their careers, definitely on the record alone, and even that magazine implied that this bootleg of the Caddy outtakes was going around at parties and being sold on the black market or wherever. And it can ruin their careers, and they wanted them to, I'm not sure what they wanted them to do, but they're like, think of your public.
Well, it's interesting that the time that it came out or came to the surface, these are non-fans. These are people that are jealous, possibly. Who knows where it starts or why it starts? It's up to there's someone that's up to no good that wants to make a name for themselves, put themselves in the spotlight at at their expense, whoever the celebrity is. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens. That's why you had all those confidential magazines. They were nothing but a bunch of lies or untruths, but it's sold. This is just there's just a group of people out there that like this sort of thing, but who knows why it happens. I'm so curious, that we have a group of fans that can dig up this type of stuff. Being that I was a collector for all these years and a Martin and Lewis fan since I was, that I can remember, I'm still learning to this day because, of the Facebook and media. It's just like there's stuff out there. You just told me I could go look up this FBI stuff online. Well, it wasn't the type of thing I was particularly interested in. But now, now that I know it's there, I can look at it, and make up my own mind.
Yeah.
Basically, I already know it's a bunch of trash, because what's the point?
Well, and also like Edgar J. Hoover, like they were, he's paranoid. He was paranoid. He wanted something on everybody, and that's why he was obsessed with like Charlie Chaplin and finding something on him because he had a vendetta against him.
There's some people that have too much power and they abuse their power, and that's and Hoover was one of those people. He was a liar, but we've seen those kind of people before, and they're still out there, and they're still out there in positions of authority now.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and it didn't ruin their careers.
Yeah.
There were tens of thousands of those bootleg records sold in the 50s while they were a team. And as you said, they were played at parties and whatnot. Hey, you got to hear this. And it's hilariously funny. But what might have had an impact on their careers are these photos that only recently surfaced just a few years ago of the two of them in the shower nude together that I found just jaw-droppingly shocking. Why would they pose fully exposing themselves for these photos in the 50s? What if those got out back then? They didn't. I had no awareness of them.
They did in magazine form, but cropped. But
right.
So I mean,
the full photos, which cropped, we didn't know. Maybe they were wearing bathing suits.
Yeah,
they weren't, and they were soaping each other up, and it's like, wow, what? It was just bizarre, and it was. When you hear what it was a gag for a specific person to shock that guy, and they never thought, they people make stupid decisions. Those photos still exist. There's like a dozen of them, and they're being posted. We can see them, and I can't believe that they did it. They did, and but it was to pull a gag on someone. Jerry was always pulling his pants down. He was proud of himself. And he just didn't care.
the people saw a show when he, as we were talking about earlier, when he anointed himself with the Dean's cologne, he ran out naked in the hallway. You know, they were running in their underwear, in their shows. They were running around in their underwear in the shows.
Yeah.
You know, so obviously he probably wouldn't want it posted.
Telephone.
But like,
right.
they're both gone now. So like, who like, it doesn't matter. And people that want to clutch their pearls and get like angry at people like me who were like who are having a laugh about it and you know, or whatever, and posting some of those photos. You know what? Whatever. Nobody.
Yeah.
You're getting too upset about something, and nobody cares if they're naked or not. Like, who cares if they're naked? Like, it's not going to affect their reputation if that's what you're worried about.
No.
Like, his reputation.
There's a different reaction now than there was decades ago.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't understand the need to get upset, but yet some individuals did.
Somebody will always get upset, even if you say "Have a nice day."
Yeah.
Just,
what do you mean?
It's just the way life is.
So yeah, and so I don't know why the Lewis family wanted, or not. I don't know who specifically wanted that record, but it's not a big deal. Like, I mean, the stuff on the caddy was more shocking when I first heard it than this, and now it's not even shocking anymore. It's just hilarious. It was hilarious.
It's hilarious. Yeah, I'm glad you got it.
The way we react as a fan is not the same way the family reacts to whatever we're talking about. You know, our point of view is not their point of view. You've got to understand that they have the right to react whatever the way they react, and don't take offense if it's not, you know, in your ballpark. It's just, you know, they have the right. I might not like it if it was my, you know, family member that all of a sudden 30 years later or 40 years later something comes to light. I said, you know what? That's our business. That's not your business. It's not the world's business. It's not the public's business. Even if there is no reaction on a big scale from the public, maybe from the fans. But I think from the fans, it's a gamut of reaction. But it's really, you know, it's a whole different ballgame when you're the family member and you can take slight to it because that's their right. So anyway.
Also it was just like, because I was pointing out, I think that Martin and Lewis, I feel like some fans get weird when I mention that Martin and Lewis were sex symbols, whether you like it or not. Like, that's sex and slapstick was their motto or whatever. So
it was the premise of their act. Absolutely.
It's just like, I like, they were gonna be attractive to women, and they still have fangirls. Okay, I'm a fangirl.
They do.
I'm not gonna lie about that. They're attractive men. They're attractive dudes.
They were.
But I mean, obviously, I'm not gonna be. There is a line to be drawn with some people who get weird about that. And as me and I think Gary, we talked about like people photoshopping themselves into the photos with them, or I don't know, with their kids. Some people did that too. They photoshopped Jerry with their child. That was a whole new level, but
you know, sometimes take things too far. You know, just because you think one way, you know, someone else is thinking another way. It's like, that's too far. There, you know, you can be a fan, but don't be a super fan where you take it over the line into bad taste. And I actually have one of those moments when I was picking up Jerry's luggage at the hotel to go back to the airport, where I got these, this handwritten memo I happen to think, so is it true about the white socks? So I looked into the waste paper basket in the bathroom, and there they were. There were like 2 or 3 pairs of white socks in there. I go, holy cow. It's true. He wears white socks every day and he throws them away. Should I take them as a souvenir? That was my line. I'm not crossing that line. That's just too weird. Now, if I would have taken them years later, I mean, there was no eBay back then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, these are Jerry Lewis's white socks. You want to buy them? How do you prove? So, it's like there's a certain line I think you got to realize and don't cross it, because I've met a number of Jerry Lewis fans that are just, they're somewhere else and they've crossed the line. And you mentioned it, they're putting themselves in pictures and claiming that this is my uncle or my cousin or I'm a family member.
Oh yeah, there was one doing that too, and in the We Love Jerry Lewis thing, fan group on Facebook.
Yeah, sometimes you love the movie star too much.
Yeah,
and Rick and I know those people in the Laurel and Hardy world. We know a number of them from the Laurel and Hardy world.
There's always going to be,
but I wouldn't want to dig into the trash can to get a piece of Kleenex someone blew his nose on.
Yeah.
That's
I'm not
crazy.
Even for Jerry, we're not gonna do that. We're not gonna have his germs. Yeah, like even, I mean, clothing wise, is that acceptable? Is like something that he previously wore, like a lot of shirts are out there. I mean, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that on the estate sale. His jackets and his shirts.
Yeah.
His boots. Oh yeah. I mean, I don't think I bid on any of those. I wanted to, but what I really wanted was the luggage that I actually held, that I picked up and brought back to the airport. That meant something to me because I had history with his luggage and his briefcases that I picked up. So, and I lost out on every single one of them. And I even tried some of his cameras, obviously, a photographer. I lost out. I lost out at the last second, so I didn't get anything. But I do have my memories.
Who is outbidding?
I don't know. It was always strange, a very strange number too. It wasn't like, when it gets to a certain point, it goes up $25, $50, $100 per bid. And these ended at like $512. Well, what is that? What kind of number is that? They were just odd numbers.
Maybe celebrities were also bidding in on like higher stuff that people weren't able to.
No, that they weren't celebrities. I was at that auction in Las Vegas.
Well, wasn't some online?
Jeff Abraham. Yes, it was online as well.
Oh yeah, that's how I bid. I bid online.
But the world-class collectors were there in the room holding up a paddle bidding. I was one of them. I won, as you know, many of the scrapbooks from that Jerry had bound. But Jeff Abraham introduced me to some of these guys that they had tons of money to burn, and they wanted the shirts that he wore, or the luggage that he used, or the makeup, or a piece of art, an oil painting, and that stuff was going for tens of thousands of dollars. The family made great money on that auction. I paid almost $1,000 for scrapbooks, and I still have them. I use some of the rare photos in the Martin and Lewis book. It's some of the best images in there are right from Jerry's Colgate Variety Hour scrapbook that has literally have never been seen by anyone since those were taken, and he had them pasted into the scrapbook. So that stuff was offered up by the family. Nothing wrong with buying it. but some of those guys were just fanatical collectors that were in their 50s and 60s and had thousands of dollars to spend on this stuff. I was one of them. It was an extraordinary event, and I'm glad I met those guys, but they had collections that were nothing like mine, full of very personal stuff.
Wow. But yeah,
Maybe those are the things that have a convention. I always wanted a convention, a Jerry Lewis convention. Like, Rick and I go to the Laurel and Hardy conventions for the past several decades. But there's no Jerry Lewis or Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis convention.
No.
There's just been film festivals. But I always thought, well, why not? Why didn't someone think of doing that? And I actually was thinking of doing it for maybe like a weekend, and I ran into Kathleen Freeman just before one of Jerry's shows, and I talked to her about it, and I explained to her about the Laurel and Hardy conventions, which she was well aware of because she was at one or two of our events.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, I would definitely go to one. If you put together a Jerry Lewis weekend, I will definitely be there as long as Jerry okays it. Meaning that you got to contact Jerry. This is the idea. This is what we want to do. And if Jerry says it's good, then she would go to it. But if Jerry says no, she wouldn't go to it. She's loyal. They're probably all loyal to Jerry.
Yes.
Anyone that worked for him is probably loyal to him.
Well, who starts the Laurel and Hardy ones? Just fans?
Yeah, fans. It was a biographer that started in New York in the mid 1960s when Stan Laurel was still alive, and he said, "This is what I'd like to do." And Stan said, as long as it's got a half-assed dignity to it, and you don't take yourselves too seriously, he was fine with it. And that's the way the Laurel and Hardy Club started. I mean, the major Sons of the Desert started by one guy. I mean, a very, very intelligent man, author, professor, and he had a group of friends in New York, and they met, and it just grew from there. And once his book on Laurel and Hardy came out and went nationwide, there was a contact number if you wanted to start your own local club of the Laurel and Hardy fan club, known as Sons of the Desert. It just started, by fans creating their own local groups. And that's how I met Rick, was at a convention.
Maybe we should
1978.
Maybe we should start a
Yeah.
Martin Lewis one.
Yeah,
Slash Jerry
it takes a
Lewis.
lot of planning, but it started out as a weekend. We had a 3-day weekend in Chicago, and there's so many, like Rick said, there's so many fans, serious fans that have great memorabilia. We could fill a room with stuff, which is what the Laurel and Hardy fans did. A room for memorabilia, another room for films to show, another room to buy and sell, what have you, or just to show. I mean, there was a room just to show stuff, not for sale. Very rare memorabilia. It's not for sale, but here's what we have. Like their costumes, so it can be done. But you'd need a core group of people to get together and plan a day or two to celebrate Martin Lewis.
And
I'm in.
yeah, I mean, it could be I don't know. It just depends on what a room would cost to put that stuff together. But I definitely have thought about showing my collection off at someday, and just setting everything up and having people just come in. That's definitely
look at it. You have to think about security to make sure the room is locked and nobody can get in there. Those are things that we in the Sons of the Desert have been doing for 40 plus years to make sure, because some great stuff shows up either to sell at a dealer's room or to just show at a memorabilia, table. Just this is what still exists. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but our club has been doing it for a long time, very successfully. But in those days, we still had the celebrities were still alive that were either in the Laurel and Hardy movies or worked on the Laurel and Hardy movies. If we're talking about Martin Lewis, again, there's still probably crew members and some actors and actresses around.
Some.
But how do you find them? It's a lot of work.
Well, in fact, we just lost Robert Blake a few days ago. He was in a Laurel and Hardy film in 1944. One of the last actors who was alive, that couldn't say that. There's probably just two or three left. But with Martin and Lewis, whose films were made 2 decades later, we could find some like a Kathleen Freeman, a Stella Stevens. It would have been made for that level of person, but even they're gone now. I met Susan Oliver. She was in The Disorderly Orderly and Hardly Working. She was just lovely. She had wonderful memories of working with Jerry Lewis. She would have gone. She's gone now too. So
she was one of my favorite co-stars in Jerry Lewis movies, Susan Oliver, because she was a very intelligent woman and very unique. A pilot. She was more than the actress that we know her as from those movies and TV shows of the 1960s. She was a very accomplished woman, and she would have been a spectacular person to meet at a weekend convention. But I don't know who's left. Susanna York was another one that we met on Facebook, and not Susanna York.
Francine.
Anyways,
Francine York.
Francine York. Yeah.
Yep. She died a couple of years ago. Corinne Calvé, I met her. She signed a picture from Sailor Beware for me. She's gone. So, it's sad.
Well, we'll have to do some research and see who would be left. I mean, at least even a later solo co-star from their solo films.
Yeah.
Would work.
There's got to be a few left from both of their solo careers.
Yeah. Well, Jill St. John and Connie Stevens.
She's around.
Connie Stevens, definitely
yeah.
would definitely be a good one, for sure.
Very good. Yep.
That's how you get the people to go, the celebrities.
Yeah.
And any crew members. Well, you interviewed one of them, but what if they're still around? It's going to take digging and a lot of detective work to find people. Donna from Family Jewels, she's the little girl, but she's gone.
Yeah. But like Scotty, his son, he would probably go. Maybe Deanna Martin would come if she could sell some CDs and maybe do a performance. There's people.
Scotty and Chris have both. I think they've both come to our Sons of the Desert things. I met both of them over the years, and it was Sons of the Desert related.
Scotty goes down to the Saps at Sea meetings in San Diego frequently.
Yeah. And we can always ask Gary to come because he has an autograph.
Yeah. I don't know. I've kind of said stuff about Gary on this channel, even though I'm a fan of his music, but maybe not. Only because of certain, things he
well, maybe
said
that'll be up to somebody else, Rick or I. I love Gary's music.
Yeah,
I love his music, and definitely I saw him in concert in 2013, so that was fun. But yeah,
everybody loves the clown.
I love younger Gary. Older Gary saying crap wasn't necessary, I think, but
Yeah, as a little boy, I wanted to be one of Jerry Lewis's sons. Then I got older, and I found out, as we all did,
maybe not.
Maybe not. Maybe I'll just be a fan.
Maybe a daughter. If I always say, if been allowed, if he had been allowed, if he had daughters all along, maybe he wouldn't have been as hard on them. I think he had like he wanted them to have more discipline than he had when he was a child. And I think that was, and he just didn't know how to be he didn't know what to do with them when they grew up, is what I've heard. Like he didn't know how to be a father once they were adult with adult problems, because he was still a kid in many ways. So I think,
Well, he was busy. I mean,
yeah,
if you think about his life, he's busier than almost anybody else on this planet. He was
yeah,
go, go, go. You know, he slept for 4 or 5 hours, and he was writing, and he was producing, he was directing, he was starring. And
yeah,
I mean, those briefcases that I held had TV shows and scripts in them and film scripts. You know, he was just never stopped. So there's only 24 hours in the day. And, you know, he really he put it just, I don't know what you have to have some time for your family, and yet he had time for all the other stuff. And
yeah,
you know, as he got older, you know, it was tough.
yeah,
So I have to think of it that way. It's not like a guy that had a 9 to 5 job. He had a job 24 hours, 7, you know, with the MDA and then film, Hollywood and TV, and people, you know, he couldn't walk out of his room without people coming up to him. This I watched for, you know, 2 weekends, and it was like none of us know what his life was like unless you were there. And I only had those 2 weekends to watch where he couldn't walk down the street without people coming up to him. Get in the car, go to another place, get in the lobby, people coming up to him because they discover him. You know, it's like he's so well known. The pressure was astronomical. I know I couldn't do it. How many people could do what he did? So you always have to think in terms of what that person is going through.
yeah. Not to mention like the pain he was in for many years,
Physical pain.
for a lot
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
years where
Yeah,
his
that's
sons
another
were,
aspect.
or where his sons were growing up. And it was all during that time. And you know, I'm
Yeah.
sure he was a jerk some of the time, because you know, just from the, you know, what he was going
Reaction
through
to
with that.
medication, yeah, and whatever he's going through at the time. You know, there's the film that I posted of uh, when I first met him, and that you saw the picture of me with him. But I was shooting film, and as we come out of the building, as Jerry comes out of the building, a teenage girl comes out of the building. She's my personal friend. Well, she does not have good memories of meeting Jerry Lewis because he just dissed her. He wouldn't give her an autograph, wouldn't give her the time, because you can see he's trying to get to his limousine, and she took that to slight. And I had the totally opposite opinion and reaction. So, you know, to this day, she says, "Well, I like him for what he's done, but I don't like him." Well, you know, he can't give everybody the time of day, an autograph, and stop. You know, he just, you know, his schedule was incredibly filled. So you
And it's
got to
like,
see him in person.
yeah, it's like the king of comedy, where the
Right.
woman's trying to get him to say something to her son on the phone, and like she's like, I hope you get
Yeah.
cancer or whatever, because he's like, I don't
You
have
know,
the
yeah,
time.
that King of Comedy movie, his character was so much Jerry Lewis. You know, people don't realize that that was so patterned after his real life situation, and how people come at him from every direction. And how can you take that day after day, year after year, decade after decade? You have to realize that was his life. And we don't have that type of you know, tension or you know, activity thrown at us. So we just don't. There's just nothing like it. The Beatles had it, you know, and he, you know, I'm sure big stars have it. There's just something about too much celebrityism and how you handle it.
Yeah,
Everyone has to have a bad day.
yeah, for sure. All right, we're gonna end on that note. Any closing thoughts, Rick? Buy the book.
Make sure you buy Marketing Mayhem from Amazon.
There it
the
is.
new upgraded color edition. It's not a cheap book. It is a bit over $100, but man, I think it's worth every dollar.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of Martin and Lewis, you got to have it. And if you're a fan of Abbott and Costello, you'll want to get Advertising Anarchy this summer.
Yeah.
This
And
has been great to get
I'll
together.
include that link. I'll include the link in the bio.
Oh,
Sure.
thank you. Very good.
What was
Thanks,
that, Gary?
Kat.
I was just going to say this was a great conversation that we had. I really enjoyed it. I hope the viewers will enjoy it and got something out of it. They'll certainly get a new book out of it, and maybe someone out there will try and come up with an idea to actually have a Martin and Lewis weekend somewhere. I would certainly love to be a part of it.
Yeah, me too.
And definitely, like, you've been a fan of the past roundtable discussions, and you're finally on here, Gary.
Yeah, I do put out some examples of, hey, I loved your talks with several people, so and I always have input, because of my I mean, I was just so lucky to meet him decade after decade throughout my life. I still have more stories that I haven't told about, meeting him. Rick knows probably most of them, but we talk about stuff and I go, yeah, there was that other time that I met him in, our show or whatever. I've really been a very lucky Jerry Lewis fan, really lucky.
Well, hopefully next time we'll have a full roundtable of and invite Jeff and Alan. Hopefully they can join us, or it'll just be us three, or definitely Alan and Jeff want to do another one with me too, for sure. So we'll figure it out, and we'll see you next time on the Jerry Lewis Roundtable discussion.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Everybody.
Thank you.